Hi friends. Please subscribe and help me reach my first 1,000 subscribers. Thank you. I hope you enjoy this story. Let us go. David Sanders leaned back in his plush leather executive chair, staring thoughtfully out the floor-to-ceiling window of his downtown Dallas office. The streets below were a gridlock of Friday afternoon traffic, but up here, the city noise was nothing more than a distant hum. His mind was already drifting toward the weekend. Lily, his youngest, was away at a cheer camp in Hill Country and would not be back until Sunday, while Mia had been settled into her sorority house at UT Austin for a few weeks now. The silence at home presented a rare opportunity to return to forgotten rituals with his wife, a candle at dinner, maybe a bottle of good Cabernet on the patio, and those long, unhurried conversations about everything and nothing. David glanced at his Apple Watch and decided he'd earned an early exit. He grabbed his blazer, fantasizing about a quiet evening with Jessica, perhaps a walk through the arboretum or just enjoying the cool evening air in their own backyard. We need to remember what it's like to just be a couple, he thought, sliding his MacBook into his briefcase. His home in the suburbs greeted him not with the usual comfortable quiet, but with a hollow, echoing emptiness that felt heavy in the air. The kitchen was deserted, though the pendant lights over the island were on. David felt a prick of unease and headed straight for the master bedroom. "Jessica, you home?" he called out, walking down the hallway. The answer did not come immediately. "In here, David." He walked into the bedroom and froze. Jessica was sitting at her vanity, applying a shade of red lipstick that meant business. She was wearing an elegant black cocktail dress, and around her neck rested the pearl necklace he bought her from Tiffany's last Christmas. At her feet sat a weekender bag, zipped and ready. "Wow, you look incredible," David said, trying to mask his sudden confusion with a smile. "Did I drop the ball on something? Do we have plans tonight?" Jessica capped her lipstick and met his gaze in the mirror. Her eyes were focused, serious, lacking their usual warmth. "No, David, you did not forget anything. These are my plans," she said, choosing her words with deliberate care. "I am heading out for the weekend." David furrowed his brow, the gears in his mind grinding to a halt. "What do you mean, heading out? To where?" His voice wavered slightly, though he tried to keep it level. "I have a meeting," Jessica continued, standing up and turning to face him. "It's just one weekend, David. I need this. I need to feel like me again. I thought you'd understand." He took a step back, as if physically shoved. A dull ache of confusion and pain bloomed in his chest. "Are you serious, Jessica?" He looked at her, half expecting her to crack a smile and tell him he'd been pranked. But her expression remained impenetrable. "I am deadly serious," she said, her voice soft but unyielding. "I have to do this for myself so I do not feel so empty inside." "For yourself? You're not planning on spending this time alone, are you? So, who is this guy you're going to find yourself with?" David's voice sharpened, his temper flaring. Jessica looked away. "His name does not matter. We're just friends. He's married, he has kids. It does not mean anything like that. I did not want to hide this from you, which is why I am telling you now. You call this honesty?" David whispered, feeling the air leave his lungs. "Looking me in the eye and telling me you're taking off with another man, that's your version of honesty? I did not want to do this behind your back. It's just a weekend getaway. I'll come back home, and everything will go back to normal." David stared at her in silence. Did she actually believe the words coming out of her mouth? It sounded like some twisted, warped version of therapy speak, as if this betrayal was just a wellness break, after which their marriage would magically be stronger. "How long have you been planning this, Jessica?" he asked, feeling his face heat up with anger. "A few weeks. David, please try to understand." "Understand?" He cut her off, his voice trembling. "Understand that my wife is planning to spend the weekend with another man and then waltz back in here like nothing happened?" Jessica stepped closer and placed a hand on his shoulder. "This will not change anything between us. I love you, David. I am just burnt out, and I need a break. Life just keeps going, and this constant monotonous routine is killing me. I need to blow off some steam, and then we'll be back to us, do not worry." He recoiled, shrugging her hand off his shoulder. "You're wrong. This has already changed everything." The silence that filled the room was deafening. Jessica lowered her eyes, realizing her pitch had not landed. David turned on his heel and walked out of the bedroom, his footsteps heavy on the hardwood floor of the hallway. In his home office, he shut the door behind him and tried to get a grip. Waves of emotion crashed over him, washing away any attempt at rational thought. He pulled out his iPhone, his fingers mechanically finding an old contact he had not used in years. He hit dial. "Hey Hannah, it's David Sanders," he said, his voice shaking with tension. Panic seized him, and he abruptly ended the call before she could respond. He stood in the middle of his study, unable to shake the numbness caused by the conversation with Jessica. Her words bounced around his skull like an echo in an empty canyon. He replayed the scene in the bedroom over and over, looking for a glitch in the matrix, some sign that this was a nightmare he'd wake up from when the Texas sun hit the windows. But it was reality, harsh and unforgiving. The buzzing of his phone snapped him back to the present. He picked it up, and a familiar voice came through the speaker. "David? You still there?" Hannah's voice was as gentle as he remembered.
"Yeah, I'm sorry."
"Did not mean to call and hang up like a teenager," he said, struggling to control his tone. I needed to talk to someone." "You sound shaken up. Is everything okay?" Her concern bridged the gap of time and distance immediately, and David felt the knot in his chest loosen just a fraction.
"No, Hannah."
"Nothing is okay," he admitted, allowing himself to acknowledge the horror of the situation for the first time that evening. "Jessica just told me she's leaving for the weekend with another guy." There was a pause on the line, and David could hear her sharp intake of breath. "What?" she finally said, her voice unsteady. "I do not believe it." "Jessica? I always thought you guys were rock solid. The model couple." "I thought so too," David let out a dry, humorless chuckle. "Guess I was wrong." Hannah fell silent, and in that silence, David heard her shock and her empathy. A moment later, she broke the quiet. "You should not be alone tonight. Why do not you come over to my place? I am making dinner, and I've got a bottle of really good wine. It would not hurt either of us." David closed his eyes, memories of the days they worked together flooding back, her support, the warmth she always radiated. "Maybe that is a good idea," he said, feeling the tension in his shoulders drop slightly. "Great. I'll be waiting," she said, and he could hear a subtle smile in her voice, a gentle reminder of simpler times. An hour later, David stood on Hannah's front porch, his heart hammering against his ribs like he was 16 again and picking up a prom date. The door swung open, and he was met by a familiar grounding smile. Her blue eyes, usually bright with humor, instantly clouded with concern the moment they landed on his face. "Come in," she said, stepping aside to clear the threshold. "You look like you have not slept in a decade." "Feel like it too," David admitted, stepping into the living room. The space was warm and lived in, a sharp contrast to the hollow echo he'd left behind. The soft glow of a table lamp bounced off bookshelves packed with paperbacks and framed photos of her son, Luke, from his Little League days to his recent graduation.
"Si.
I'll get the wine," Hannah said, disappearing into the kitchen. David sank onto the sofa, taking in the room. There was an atmosphere of genuine comfort here, something he suddenly realized he had not felt in his own home for a long time. Hannah returned a moment later with 2 glasses of a dark red blend, sat down next to him, and pinned him with a look that demanded total honesty. "Spill it," she said gently. "Tell me everything." He exhaled, a long, shaky breath, and then the dam broke. The words tumbled out: the empty house, the scene in the bedroom, Jessica's cold rationalization of her wellness weekend with another man. Hannah listened without interrupting, just nodding occasionally to let him know she was with him. "I never would have pegged Jessica for that," she said finally, after he trailed off. "You always talked about her like she was the one sure thing in your life." "Yeah, well, I really loved her," David said, staring down into the swirling depths of his wine. "But now? I do not even know what to think." Hannah reached out, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "David, look at me. You deserve to be with someone who actually values you. Someone who sees you." Her voice was quiet, but carried the weight of absolute conviction. He looked up, meeting her gaze, and felt something in his chest unlock at her words. But before he could respond, his iPhone buzzed violently on the coffee table. The screen lit up. "Jessica." Sorry, I have to take this, he said, standing up and pacing a few steps away toward the window. David, Jessica's voice was frantic, bordering on desperate. I know you re-pissed, and maybe I deserve that. But please, do not do anything that blows this whole thing up. I want to come back. I want things to be like they were. He closed his eyes, the anger and the grief warring inside him. That ship has sailed, Jessica. You already blew it up, he said, and tapped the red icon to end the call. Is everything okay? Hannah stood up and walked over to him, her eyes searching his face. I think so, he replied, turning to face her. He felt a strange sensation. The crushing weight on his shoulders was starting to lift. Maybe for the first time in a long time. Hannah smiled, a soft, genuine expression, and they settled back onto the couch. The conversation flowed effortlessly, carrying them through the night until the deep indigo outside the window began to fade into the gray of dawn. Morning found David and Hannah still in the living room, bathed in the soft, diffused light of the Texas sunrise. They had spent the entire night talking, reminiscing about the old days of the firm, sharing regrets about life plans that went sideways, and finding something they had both lost along the way: warmth, understanding, and simple human connection. Hannah laughed softly, a memory surfacing. Hey, do you remember that time I accidentally sent your quarterly report to the CEO with the subject line "The Cure for Insomnia"? David chuckled, a genuine sound that felt foreign in his throat. Oh God, do I ever. I spent 30 minutes trying to convince him it was some kind of meta joke. Thanks for the support on that one, by the way. He smiled at her, filled with a sudden rush of gratitude. Hey, it worked, did not it? She winked. After that, he read every single one of your reports, just to see if they were actually that boring. For a fleeting moment, the world outside those walls felt miles away, like they had time traveled back 10 years to when life was simpler. But the reality of the present was not going to be ignored forever. David looked away, taking a deep breath. Hannah, what if Jessica? What if she does not let this go? Even if she comes back, sits in the house. Can we ever go back to being who we were? Hannah took his hand, her thumb brushing over his knuckles. She caught his gaze and held it. You're re-asking the wrong question, David. You need to ask yourself, do you want it to be like it was before? After everything that just happened? He froze, the weight of her question settling over him. It cut through the layers of denial he'd been wrapping himself in. In that quiet morning light, David realized the truth was not just about Jessica's betrayal. It was that he had lost a piece of himself years ago trying to keep that machine running. I do not know what I want anymore, he whispered, letting go of her hand. Maybe that is a good thing, Hannah said, giving his fingers a gentle squeeze before pulling away. Sometimes not knowing is the first step to finding something new. Something real. A sharp knock at the front door shattered the silence, making them both jump. David checked his watch, way too early for casual visitors. Expecting anyone? He asked, frowning. Hannah shook her head. No, she said, standing up. Might be the neighbor. He comes over sometimes to borrow tools for his weekend projects. David stayed seated while she went to the foyer. But instead of the neighbor's baritone, a familiar strained voice drifted down the hallway. Hannah, I know David is here. Please, let me in. We need to talk. Hannah froze in the entryway. David felt his heart kickstart into a frantic rhythm. Jessica. She was here. David, do you want me to let her in? Hannah asked quietly, glancing back over her shoulder. He stood up, his eyes narrowing. Fear, rage, betrayal, it all swirled together in a toxic cocktail. Finally, he nodded. Let her in. Let us get this over with. Hannah opened the door, and Jessica stepped inside. Her face was drawn and tight, her eyes rimmed red from crying. She looked at Hannah first, then locked onto David. The silence that filled the room was heavy, suffocating. I knew I'd find you here, Jessica said, her voice trembling but accusation laced underneath. I could not wait anymore, David. We have to talk. He nodded stiffly and gestured to the armchair opposite the sofa. Jessica sat, her hands nervously twisting the fabric of her skirt. Hannah stood nearby, ready to retreat to the kitchen, but David held up a hand. Stay, he said firmly. She needs to hear the truth. Jessica shot a look at Hannah, a flash of confusion and jealousy sparking in her eyes. The truth? What are you talking about? David sighed and sat down across from her. About us, Jessica. About what happened, and what happens next. You came here to say something, so say it. She looked down, her lower lip quivering. I know what I did was terrible, Jessica began, her voice cracking. I see not justify it, but I was so confused, David. Everything just felt so empty since Mia left for Austin. I was looking for something to make me feel alive again. And I chose the worst possible way to do it. Yes, I admit I lied to you, and no, this was not the first time I met him. But I did not realize what I was doing. I thought, in some twisted way, I thought this would bring us back together, shock the system. But I went too far, and I see that now. I'm telling you the truth now in hopes that you can forgive me. Are you out of your damn mind? David cut her off, staring her dead in the eye. You thought you could just walk out, cheat, and then come back like nothing happened? You wanted me to understand that? Do you hear yourself? He leaned forward, his voice rising. I am not forgiving you. Not after what you did. Jessica raised her head, fresh tears welling in her eyes. You were with her, were not you? She shifted her gaze to Hannah, her expression hardening. I know this is not just a friendly shoulder to cry on. Yeah, David answered calmly. We were together. But this is not just about revenge, Jessica. It was a reminder of who I used to be. Before I became invisible. Before I stopped mattering. But we can try again. Jessica exclaimed, her voice pitching up in desperation. We can get through this together, rebuild the trust. We can go to counseling. Hannah stood silently near the hallway, observing the wreckage, waiting for David to make the call. The silence returned, heavier this time, settling on David's shoulders like a physical weight. Jessica, I see not go back, he said finally, his voice quiet but steady. You broke what we had. And IV changed too. All this time I thought we were a team, that we could weather anything. But right now? I realize I do not want to anymore. Jessica dropped her head, tears streaming down her cheeks unchecked. IV lost everything, she whispered. David looked at her with pity, but his resolve did not waver. Yeah. But that was your choice, Jessica. And IV made mine. Hannah stepped closer, placing a gentle grounding hand on his shoulder. Jessica sat slumped in the armchair, her posture collapsing as if the gravity in the room had doubled. She did not bother wiping her face. Her eyes darted frantically between David and Hannah, her expression twisting with a mix of agony and sudden realization. David, her voice shook, laced with a new kind of desperation, panic mixed with a Hail Mary pass. I know asking for forgiveness is pointless right now. I know I lost you. But please, think about the girls. Think about Mia and Lily. We can try for their sake. We can live under the same roof, separate bedrooms if we have to, just until they re-older, until the dust settles. David looked at his wife. The anger had faded, leaving behind a profound sadness. Jessica, I love our daughters more than anything on this earth. And I will do whatever it takes to make sure they feel safe and loved. But I am done pretending. We see not stay together just to keep up appearances. Living a lie like that? It would only mess them up more. Hannah, realizing her presence was becoming an intrusion on their final moments, took a step back. She touched David's arm lightly. I'll be in the kitchen if you need me. When she was gone, Jessica crossed her arms tightly over her chest, hugging herself as if to hold her shattering life together. What if I change, David? What if I prove to you that I can be the woman I was before? Her voice was hopeful, but the question hung in the air, hollow and fragile. David sighed, feeling the tension knotting his muscles again. It is not about what you can or see not do, Jessica. It is that trust is not just words and promises. You nuked it. You see not just glue that back together. I thought 20 years of marriage meant something unbreakable, but now I know it can be destroyed in a single weekend. Jessica looked down, her knuckles white as she clenched her fists. It was a mistake. A stupid, thoughtless mistake, she whispered, choking on the words. I wanted to feel alive again, but I only realized too late how much I love you and how terrified I am of losing you. David stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the Dallas suburbs were waking up. An SUV drove past. A neighbor was walking a golden retriever. The world kept spinning, indifferent to the fact that his had just stopped. Jessica, I do not want to hate you, he said without turning around. But I see not live with you anymore. I need to figure out who I am without this pain and without your excuses. Jessica stood up abruptly, her face hardening defensively. You talk about pain, David? What about me? You think it does not hurt seeing you here with Hannah? Knowing you found comfort in someone else while I was falling apart? He turned to face her, a new clarity in his eyes. He realized this was not just his battle anymore. You rewrite, he said calmly. It hurts everyone. But the difference is, you pulled the trigger first. You left. I was just trying to survive the fallout. Jessica buried her face in her hands, her shoulders shaking with fresh sobs. She knew there were no more cards to play, no magic words to reverse the clock. The silence wrapped around them again, two strangers standing in a room where love used to live. The chasm between them was now too wide to bridge. Finally, Jessica looked up, resignation washing over her features. Okay, David. If you want a divorce, I will not fight it. I'll sign whatever you want. But please, let us not turn this into a war zone for the girls. Let them see that we still a family, even if we are not together. David nodded, feeling the shadow of anger finally retreat, replaced by a strange sense of relief. We'll be co-parents, Jessica. And that still counts for a lot. The kitchen door creaked softly, and Hannah stepped out, avoiding Jessica's gaze. Her eyes met David's, offering silent, unconditional support. I think I should go, Jessica said, keeping her eyes fixed on David. I'll pack a bag and find somewhere to stay for a few days. We'll work out the details later, David said gently. Take your time. Jessica turned and walked to the front door. Her silhouette lingered for a second in the doorway before she stepped out, and the room suddenly felt vast and empty. Hannah walked over, her fingers barely grazing David's hand. You okay? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. No, he answered, sinking back onto the sofa. But maybe this is step one to getting there. They sat together in the quiet house, the pain no longer sharp and bleeding, just a dull ache accompanied by the faint hope that something better lay ahead. The days following the confrontation with Jessica blurred into a long stretch of reflection and difficult conversations. David tried to keep it together for the girls, while the house filled with a silence that used to feel peaceful but now felt heavy, stripped of the ambient noise of a family. Jessica had gone to stay with her sister in Plano to give everyone some breathing room. Lily and Mia learned about the divorce when both daughters were gathered in the living room on a rare evening when everyone was home. Dad, why did Mom leave? Lily asked, her eyes glassy with unshed tears. Curling up on the sectional, clutching a throw blanket like a lifeline, she looked much younger than 17. Mia, home from Austin for the weekend, squinted at him, her expression guarded and sharp, trying to catch every nuance in her father's voice. David exhaled, weighing the heavy words he had to speak. He glanced toward the hallway where Hannah stood leaning against the doorframe. Her presence was silent but steady, a much-needed anchor in the gathering storm. Girls, look, there's no easy way to say this, David began, his voice calm but strained with the effort to keep it together. Your mom and I have decided that it's best if we separate. It was not an easy decision, and I know how much this hurts both of you. Lily bit her lip, her eyes widening in shock. Why? Her voice cracked, and she shot a panicked look at Mia, who sat motionless, her knuckles white as she gripped the cushions. We just realized we not be happy together anymore, David said carefully, trying to navigate the minefield of details. But that does not change how much we love you. We are still a family, just different. Mia finally spoke, her voice sharp and colder than he expected. I knew something was off. The house has been way too quiet lately. Dad, Mom, did she leave because of someone else? Her question was a direct shot, and David flinched, startled by her intuition. Yeah, Mia, that's part of it, he admitted, looking down at the carpet. But I do not want you to hate her. Your mom was struggling, and she made mistakes. We all human. Lily broke down then, her sobs deep and gut-wrenching. Mia wrapped an arm around her, pulling her younger sister into her shoulder. We'll figure it out, Lil, Mia whispered, looking at her father with a gaze that was heartbroken but understanding. We just need time. David looked at his daughters and felt a dull, expanding ache in his chest. He knew the road to recovery would be a marathon, not a sprint, but in that moment, despite the wreckage, he felt a flicker of hope. They were tough kids. They would get through this together. Later that night, after the house had finally settled and the girls had gone to bed, David sat at the kitchen island with Hannah, wrapping his hands around a warm mug of tea. She watched him with quiet concern. "You handled that better than I could have imagined," she said, taking a sip from her own mug. "They know you love them, David. That's the only thing that matters right now." David nodded, staring blankly at the granite countertop. "I am not sure I am doing any of this right, Hannah. It kills me to see them hurting. And I feel guilty. Guilty that I found some peace with you while their whole world is imploding." Hannah reached across the island, her touch soft and grounding on his arm. "You're a person too, David. You have a right to be happy. You deserve the support I am trying to give you. Nobody said this was going to be a walk in the park, but we're going to get through it together." He met her gaze, seeing his own fears and hopes reflected in her eyes. Hannah was not just a crutch to get him through the divorce. She was his future, a chance to start over without the lies and the pain. "Thank you," he said quietly, squeezing her hand. "You have no idea how much it means to me that you're here." "I do," she replied with a warm smile. "And I am not going anywhere." The next morning, David met Jessica at her attorney's office downtown to hash out the terms of the divorce. It was the first time they had been face to face since the blowout at Hannah's place. Jessica looked exhausted, her eyes rimmed red as if she had not slept a wink. She was nervously shuffling papers on the mahogany conference table. "David, I want you to know I am not going to make this difficult," she said as the lawyers settled in. "I just want the girls to be okay." "I appreciate that, Jessica," he said, holding her gaze. "And I promise I'll do whatever I can to make this transition as smooth as possible for them." They went through the details: assets, savings, the custody schedule. Jessica agreed to keep the house in the suburbs so Lily and Mia would not feel like their entire lives were being uprooted. "You can come over whenever you want to see them," Jessica said, her voice quiet and laced with regret. "I do not want to get in the way of your relationship with them." David nodded, feeling a bitter wave of gratitude and sadness wash over him. "Thanks, Jessica," he said. "That means a lot." They signed the papers, and the attorney slid the folder aside, signaling the end of the official proceedings. But before standing up, Jessica looked at David, her expression raw. "I hope that one day you'll find it in you to forgive me," she said. "Not for us, but for yourself." He held her gaze, unsure of how to respond. The pain was still there, burning, but beneath it, the green shoots of forgiveness were slowly pushing through the anger. "I hope so too," he replied softly. They parted ways, heading in different directions, both sensing that this legal break was the start of a new chapter. Months passed, and life began to settle into a new rhythm. David spent more time with his daughters, making a conscious effort to be present. Hannah became an integral part of his life, but she was smart about it. She respected boundaries and never tried to force her way into the girls' lives too fast. One evening, Lily walked up to him while he was reading in the living room of his new apartment. "Dad," she started, Hannah's cool. "I see how you look at her. You smile a lot more than you used to." David set his book down and looked at his daughter. Her words were simple, but they carried a heavy wisdom. "Thanks, Lily. It's really important to me that you feel that way." "We're gonna be okay, Dad," she said, leaning in to hug him. "I know it is gonna be hard, but we'll make it." He wrapped his arms around her, feeling the sting of tears in his eyes. For the first time in a long time, he felt that the future, despite all its uncertainty, might actually be bright. And that's where today's story ends. Thank you for watching to the end. If you enjoyed it, do not forget to like and comment. We'd love to discuss this story with you. See you in the next video.